Love is a high-risk behavior.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the podcast, High Risk for Heartbreak. I am your host, Christina, and I'm so glad you decided to join me today. For those of you who are new here, I pray you find value in at least one thing I say today. And to my old and faithful returning crew, you know just how much I appreciate you. If you haven't already hit that subscription button, it helps me to know that you are enjoying this content. And even further than that, hit like on this particular episode. That not only helps me to know how to better tailor this channel for you, but also it sends it out into the airways so that others who are interested might get to know High Risk for Heartbreak. When I was a young girl, maybe 5 or 6, I told my mom that I wanted to start doing my own hair and picking out my own clothes. Up until this point, my dresses, my crinoline skirts, slips, pantyhose, ruffle socks, Mary Janes, barrettes and pigtails and braids were all chosen for me. You see, my mom did what most nurturing and doting mothers do. She helped me. She helped me to arrive at whatever destination that we traveled to in perfect order like a true Southern belle. I grew up in North Florida, and in my younger days, fashions would be considered much more formal than they are today. I mean, we were dressed, and not only did we dress, it was the cultural norm to have this sort of elevated decorum. It was ingrained into the middle-class society to be dressed better than we actually were. Interestingly enough, as an older, younger girl, I had been so indoctrinated by these ways of being and showing up that the mere thought of putting on a pair of jeans was repulsive. I wore a lot of dresses. I couldn't fix myself to properly, but more importantly, happily wear jeans because I was concerned about looking like a boy. My choice in clothes weren't the only responsibility, of course, I decided to take away from my mother. It was also my hair. Now, I don't know what your hair care situation was like growing up, but hair, especially in most Black households and still today, is a very big deal. My brother went to the barbershop next to the salon that my mom and my sister went to every 2 weeks, like clockwork. It was my turn, of course, then to graduate into this new era of life. So every 2 weeks, my sister, my mom, and I sat in these salon chairs from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m., sometimes a little later, getting all of our hairs done. My mom used to be the primary caretaker of our hair until this point, and it just became too much, of course, understandably so, because it was a lot of hair up in that house, okay? There was a lot of hair. But honestly, looking back, I don't know how my parents were able to even afford the expense of this every 2 weeks. God bless them, okay? In between the 2 weeks, I was wanting to style my hair, though, myself, for school and for church. And I believe most of the time I did. I remember putting my hair in barrettes and twists and stuff like that. I remember my mom telling me how hurt she was, though, that her last baby, which I'm the baby, can you tell? Her last baby wanted to assert her independence. And that was really hard for my mom to see. What she didn't know was little Miss Ward was metamorphosing right before her eyes. I think I've mentioned this before, but the administration all throughout my school years, always addressed me with prefix. It was Little Miss Ward, and in some cases, I guess without prefix, just Ward. That was a lot in high school. So rarely did my teacher and my administrators address me as Christina, which is so interesting. So Little Miss Ward kind of set the tone for much of these habitual behaviors that I am still having to break today. Because my brother and my sister are close in age and I am the baby by 6 and 7 years behind them, they grew up and left the home right as I started to really move into my preteen years. And we all know how valuable those years are with forming your identity and with core values and all of the things that will then push you into your future life. But even before then, my brother and sister played a lot together and I tagged along as much as I could, as the annoying little sister would do, but only as often as they allowed, right? I spent a lot of time because of that alone. And if not with my neighborhood friends, I was alone. Because of this, I began to really assert these independent habits that only grew from there. Little Miss Independent. Now, jump cut to my 17th year. I'm in high school, prepping for university, and I decide that I want to go to school out of state. Now, I won't say that it was a bad choice to go to school out of state, to a private, predominantly white university out of state, all on student loans. I won't say it was a bad idea. But in hindsight, there were definitely better choices. However, my parents trusted me, and that meant so much to me as I took off for university in Long Island, New York, to pursue a future by myself and for myself, of course. My parents trusted me to be 1,000 miles away from them, the baby. And of course, the habit of independence was again reinforced. Before I continue on, I actually don't view any of this as negative, by the way, so I don't want you to take it that way. I actually think it's a very positive thing, and I thank my parents. I thank them for how they pushed me along and supported me when they needed to, and they still do, honestly. But particularly because a lot of this was my personal choice, and I received a lot of support from my parents, I think that sometimes people can look at that as a negative. They allowed me to fail in some ways, and I really appreciate that, as failure has been the greatest teacher for me. After graduating from high school and performing for a few short years in New York City, I went on to LA to continue to live my best solo life, failing but moving forward despite it all. I forged another amazing community there. In 8 years, I built myself up. And by the grace of God, I lived alone all 8 of those years and just continued to foster this sense of contentment in my solo life. And here I am now in a new city. And while I didn't come to this one alone, I find myself solo yet again. And the through line of all of this is that decisions were made, supported, and reinforced. And not all decisions landed me in success. Not all of my decisions were supported, though a lot of the bigger ones were. Not all of my behavior was a result of my reinforcement from my parents or my peers, though if one wants to do something, they will find a tribe to support it. Nonetheless, these habits really served me throughout my years. They challenged my fears, taught me valuable lessons in self-efficacy, and affirmed me. In many ways, in my 20s, I felt invincible despite all of the hiccups, small and major. And I attribute that to the support of my family from childhood. And I think those little allowances, they bolstered this sense of freedom to be, to do, and to have what God intended. And often that comes from this sort of radicalized faith that is in action. But to every blessing, there is a backside, as my pastor would say. Yes, I had all of these highly independent behaviors ingrained in me from those seasons of life, and they have showed me and showed themselves approved. But when it became time to get serious about spending my future life with a partner, I found myself like a fish out of water. I didn't know how to allow a man. I didn't know how to accept help, and I didn't know how to trust his word or his plans for our future. I only knew how to trust me and God. And with every failure that has happened throughout all of my solo, sometimes single, and highly independent years, the greatest lesson of independence came in the thickets of my last relationship. I was failing a lot, you guys, and not in the same way as I had before. But if it weren't for those specific lessons, I wouldn't have developed the core strength that I needed to enter into this new season, future tense of course, of lifelong covenant, partnership, and interdependence. I would still be asserting Little Miss Ward, not allowing future Mrs. fill in the blank to be the next metamorphosis of my journey. Caterpillars don't go through multiple cycles. They don't go through multiple cycles of radical change. But I thank God that He has given me and you time, failures, and all of the above. Today, I want to speak to you, Miss Independent. I want to speak to the woman who desires the next step, but has been living contentedly in her independence. So, let's relate. Do you have any habits that could be acting as bottlenecks in developing healthy relationships in your life? A bottleneck is defined as a point in a process where the flow of work or production is significantly slowed down, reduced, or even stopped, creating a backlog and impacting the overall efficiency. A bottleneck, a traffic jam, congestion, or even gridlock can really put a halt on plans, but specifically, habits that are deeply ingrained can often stimulate congestion in our relational lives. I can think of a pattern of behavior or habit that I had, which really congested a healthy progression in my last relationship. And that habit was refusing help. Very simple. I refused to take the help. Now, this one doesn't seem that bad, but I have learned a really valuable lesson about help. Help is like a big umbrella that covers many little smaller but mighty details when it comes to a relationship. Help is not just taking initiative to do chores like mom wanted you to, or fixing a flat tire for someone that's stranded on the side of the road. Accepting help requires two traits. It requires humility and it requires trust. Without humility and trust, a person cannot help you. They can only offer, but they cannot do anything if you don't oblige humbly and trust what they have come to relieve or remedy can actually aid you. It will show up, though, as a bottleneck to the intimacy that you are trying to gain with them or that they are trying to gain with you. And one very simple example of this that I have is my ex and I traveled with his mother back to our home one time. And when it came time to remove our luggages from the car, I naturally grabbed mine and began towards trekking up this 3 flights of stairs that we had to go up every single day. His mom stopped me and said, "Honey, let him get it." And I responded, "Oh, no, it's okay. I can get it." And again, she insisted that I leave it and accept the help. Now, up until this point, I had been getting my own luggage. Think about all of these years in New York and LA, all the travels to and from home, solo, Miss Independent, getting her luggage. I built the strength for this when I was alone, each and every solo trip forcing my programming. I can do this alone, and I did. I didn't need the help, but especially I didn't want it. Wanting the help would somehow have rendered me weak and at the mercy of another, and even dependent. And remember, I spent a great deal of my years asserting my independence. Independence didn't just befall me. I'm not one of those. I'm working from a different beast here. I wanted it. So in that relationship, I had to learn how to also want help. The umbrella of help in a relationship doesn't have to wipe away our independence, but in turn, it conjoins and builds equity with every opportunity to test the scales of relational intimacy. That relationship tested the scales every day of my willingness, not my ability, because I'm able, but am I willing? My willingness to choose humility and trust to allow this man to help me. Help is just one subtopic under this even larger umbrella of relational intimacy, but I'm just pinpointing this very one today because that's what I want to talk about. And honestly, it is still in many ways a big deal for me. It's something that I have to actively work at. Me not accepting help created a dam in the intimacy of my relationship with that man. It communicated to him that I would rather be solo within the relationship, that it's only possible that I know what's best for me, and that I don't trust his judgment, his leadership, his safety protocols, and ultimately his ability to keep me alive and help me thrive. Trust was an issue that came up many times within the earlier part of our relationship. Him arguing that I didn't trust him. Truthfully, he was right. So I had to start this very introspective deprogramming of the things that worked in one very long season of my life so that I could start reprogramming or programming in this preparation for another season. Accepting help is just one of the ways that we can foster intimacy in our relationships. And while I can't diagnose any of your relational issues, I can only just share mine. I want to share with you 3 ways that I began to deprogram these relational intimacy bottlenecks in preparation to flow interdependently with my future husband. Let's jump into it. Number 1 is understanding what God intended for me relationally. Now, this one, I could just throw a few scriptures at you to support this point and move on. But I think there's even a humility and a trust that's necessary to accept the word of God as truth. But what I would say about the need for an independent woman to understand God's purpose for her relationally is that even if she lost all her guardians, her siblings, family members, and friends, as long as she is still breathing, she has relationship. It is God the Creator who exemplifies the first relationship, giving examples within the scriptures. But it is in his mere mercy that renews daily in our waking that we have relationship. We have thoughts, we have desires and needs for love, for attention, affection. And if all of those people who could provide those things are missing, she, that independent, solo, and probably very lonely woman, would be able to go to God in prayer and sup with him, utilizing him for relationship. He provides examples of himself in all of creation, like the heavens and the earth and all the things that live upon it. And in her knowing, her interacting with other creation, she has relationship to God. Now, please don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm not saying she's meant to worship creation, because that is not at all what I'm saying. But it is in her relating to God's other creation that facilitates understanding of his sovereignty and availability. When I go out to the ocean, I know God in a different way than when I'm sitting in my house. There is something about the magnitude of the ocean, the shore, the endless amounts of water and creation that live within the water, some microscopic, some that I can see, that relationship to his creation helps me understand my relationship to him and his majesty, his sovereignty. He is everywhere, in all things, all the time. So as she takes care of those things and she lives amongst his other creation, and doing that, she develops purpose. She develops interdependence and relationship with God. So it is good for us to understand that God intended for all relationships to lead back to him. And I will tell you this, whether the relationship is good or bad for you, whether it ends or lasts forever, it will always cause you to seek him for relationship. You may seek him in a bottle, in a smoke, in an escapade, but the fibers of your being are trained to seek him, even with the separation of sin. Sin might kill you, but the whole time you were in it, you were seeking the bread of life. You were seeking to be satiated, to be filled with peace, with rest, with wholeness. You were seeking what he intended, a relationship with him. So for me, that looked a lot like prayer, a lot of fasting, turning down my plate and other distractions that provided temporary satisfaction. And I found myself so emptied out that I literally didn't even have the strength spiritually or mentally or even emotionally to do it without him. I took off my yoke and I gave it to him. That act of humility and trust relieved pressure from that bottleneck in my other relationships, because I wasn't looking for them to be all. God is all. I was just looking for God. Now, the second way I have been deprogramming my hyper-independent ways was to pick two and trust a few. Now, after you have relinquished this control, so to speak, or this arrogance that hyper-independence can breed, you have to pick a couple of people close to you that you can trust. Now, you might have tons of relationships in your life, but find it hard to trust, or maybe that you're not keen on fully and wholly trusting people. But I think that there is value in that, of course, that everyone isn't to be trusted, especially with your vulnerabilities. However, I would hope that you would have at least one or two people in your life that you could trust with your vulnerabilities. So what you do is you begin to communicate your desire to develop more intimacy with them. That in and of itself is a very highly vulnerable thing to do. To communicate your needs to someone other than yourself is incredibly humbling. This could be anyone, of course, but I think it has been especially helpful for me to start forging more social interactions and closeness with men. Now, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not having relationships with a lot of men. What I am trying to do is socialize and allow myself to build social interaction with men, because it's something that I have avoided for a very long time. And not a lot of men, of course, but in general, men, okay? I personally have had a few humps that I'm working over, so I think socializing with men is a very active choice for me that is helpful for me. I have had to pick a couple of men which are helping me build my confidence and also collect data. And those two things in turn kind of help to build this network of relationships that will help to increase my health socially with men, okay? Do y'all understand what I'm trying to say? Find a couple of people that you can that you can pour into and that will also pour into you, that you can be vulnerable with and they will be vulnerable with you. And just in that, it will help to create this humility, this sense of humility and this sense of trust building and this interdependence. You will no longer be okay just being alone all the time, inside all the time. You will have people reaching out to you saying, hey, I want to see you. I have one girlfriend. She is not at all like me. She is very interdependent, and she reaches out to me often and is like, I want to see you. When can we get together? It's been such a long time. And it's so interesting because oftentimes I will get this like feeling like, oh, I feel pressure to be seen. I feel pressure to be liked. I feel pressure to be related to. And then I'm like, Christina, someone loves you so much that they can't wait to see you. Go see her. Spend time with her. But that's me getting out of my hyper independent ways. And I have to realize like, wow, okay, it's time to humble yourself right now. Wow, it's time to spend time with the people that you say you care about. Not everyone can relate and hold value for the extended period of time that you can, Christina. Some people actually need to tap into it regularly. And you probably would be better off if you started to do that for yourself as well. Number 3, and lastly, is to give up what you have always known to be true. And this is the facts that you have been able to do it alone all this time, and that no one can do it better. I hate to burst your independent bubble, but life is better with help, sis. Life is better in relationships with others. But in order for some of those relationships, and particularly a future spouse relationship, to thrive, you have to accept community. You have to accept that it's actually better. We are literally made for community. It's easier said than done, of course, to relinquish those years of doing things your way with your zone of comfort and maybe, having no negative impact, right? Because sometimes social interaction can cause negative impact, but you don't have to do that when you're by yourself. But there is beauty that comes through help. There's beauty that comes through community and relating to people if you just allow it. Now, for me, this looked like having mentors who helped me see the errors of my ways. I needed someone to call me out. And it's because I honestly couldn't see all of the facts that my independence had become a bottleneck in my relationships. I had to find out that I was capable of prioritizing other people's needs above mine and trusting that my needs would still be met. And upon all of these discoveries, I had to step back and I had to look at the data and then the difference. I could keep striving on my own, or I could let that man open that door for me. In opening that door, he will likely open other doors for me, in which he did. However, when I don't let him open my door, I'm showing him that I've been opening all my doors, and his functionality in my life kind of cheapens. And then it becomes just feelings and vibes and not a genuine trust to deliver or help me along. This is no joke, you guys. When I stopped opening my doors, and I physically mean opening the door to the car, but also trying to open doors by myself in my life, he started opening doors for me. There were other types of doors that were opened. And I was ushered into new places and spaces because I allowed him, because I trusted him. I humbled myself long enough to be covered to some extent by him. There's something very special about relinquishing, about humbling yourself and trusting and allowing. In closing, I want to say, independence is a beautiful thing that God has allowed for us to experience. But I do think life is better lived interdependently. Many of us may be working on how to begin to humble ourselves so that we can trust within relationships. And honestly, that's the first step. Humility will take you so far relationally. I cannot even clearly say that if we reach this relationally, that another time or another season won't come up where we have to work our interdependence, right? Where it's going to be tested and we will have to, again, humble ourselves and begin to trust again, because that trust may wax and wane. But what I can say is that God intended you to have at least one relationship that will always deliver on its promise. You may not think it's him, you may not think it's them, but it is him. I do pray this week that you begin to work your independence out by using that independent spirit to understand why God wants you to be in relationship with him, but also how God wants you to have relationships with others, and how trusting a couple of good people and releasing the facts that you've always known, that you've been able to do it on your own, those facts are no longer true, especially not for future seasons and your life. Like a caterpillar to a butterfly, nothing familiar comes out of that metamorphosis. They're completely gone. There is a radical act of faith, and it proves itself in the other side when that butterfly breaks free from the chrysalis. Little miss, it's time to break free from the bottlenecks holding you back from experiencing love relationally as God intended. Lean into love. Allow it. Humble yourself to receive it. Trust it. Thank you so much for loving yourself first, so you can then go and love your neighbor. Until next time.
Why don't you stay a little longer? You like what you like, right? Subscribe to the channel so we can spend a little more time together, and maybe comment your thoughts because I care what you're thinking. Love is the risk and the reward.